Hi, my name is Justin,
And I'm Pam.
and we like to talk about monsters.
Yes, we do, Justin. What are we talking about today?
I'm glad you asked. What do Gary Gygax, actor Woody Harrelson, and microscopes all have in common?
Bleep if I know.
We're going to find out today on Monster Lore.
Yay.
So, we actually had a request from one of our viewers on YouTube um, by the name of Enki, who, after our mimic video, wanted to hear about the origins of slimes. So, that's what we're doing today. This one's going out to you.
Yes.
And wow, I was surprised.
Were you?
Yeah.
You kept telling me that you were surprised.
Yeah.
You're like,
We're
you're going to be so surprised. And I'm like,
yes.
I can't wait to be surprised. Knock
Yeah.
my socks off.
So we're gonna talk about like the larger collective of like slimes and oozes and such as we know them in D&D, and we're actually gonna work our way backwards on this one and start with like that and work backwards because it
Like
went
backwards in history.
yeah, it went deeper than I thought, and there were more interconnected threads than I was expecting to find.
Oh,
So it's a surprising journey. So we're gonna do that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you've hyped this up enough that I now need to know. Like, I've actually been looking forward to hearing what this is all about because of the hype that you've given it.
Yeah, I got like halfway through writing something and then found out way more than I thought like as a throwaway investigation, and then that just went deeper than I would have imagined. So, yeah, here we go. So, for starters, slimes and oozes and jellies and puddings are all sort of a collection of like the bottom tier of challenges for adventurers that they came up with in Dungeons and Dragons way back in 1974.
Puddings.
Yes, puddings, oozes, and these are actually like different types of creatures, but they started off as just like a few different types, and they just sort of bloomed like a slime mold overnight into
Like a jello mold.
yeah, way beyond just like the few original types that they had. So some of the ones you might hear of or think of as classic ones are like a green slime, and that's just like an oozy amorphous thing that just kind of creeps along slowly doing garbage cleanup in a dungeon. And then there's
Like
the
literal garbage cleanup.
yeah, exactly. They actually fit sort of the same ecological niche that like microbes do in the real world, but they're just scaled up to be
Oh,
a threat to adventurers.
that's cool.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, they actually end up being more of an environmental type hazard than like an actual enemy.
Okay.
Something for them to like overcome, but not necessarily always combat. Although a lot of times in the early days it was combat. Another classic one that fits into this category is the, I guess, infamous gelatinous cube. Yeah, which was described as like a perfectly adapted creature to its environment of the 10 by 10 classic dungeon crawler hallway. And it was
Like,
nearly invisible.
oh, like the hallway is 10 by 10, therefore the
Yeah,
gelatinous cube is 10 by 10.
exactly. And it just like fills the
People can't
entire
see it.
space and moves forward. And telltale signs that, was one was around is that everything was too clean. And if you weren't
Okay.
careful, you could just walk right into one.
Okay. So
Yeah,
nothing left behind. No
exactly.
bones to trip over.
That's right.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
Just, can I get one for my house?
I mean, we like our dog, so probably not. And kids.
Probably be a bad idea, I
That's the
suppose.
last thing you want to find in the middle of the hallway on your way to the bathroom at 3 in the morning or something. So,
Oh
no,
no, the cube has got me again.
not
It's been out
not the
cleaning.
house. That's the kind of thing that like, Superman has as a joke for his Roomba in his Fortress of Solitude.
Okay.
Something that won't bother him but would bother somebody else.
Sure, sure, sure.
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 Basically they're like mindless creatures. They just kind of go towards the nearest thing that they perceive as like some kind of source of food. Most of the time they would deal like acid damage or poison damage. And one of the characteristics of a lot of the slimes is that they were difficult to attack with conventional weapons. So, like, if you hit one with a sword, some of them would split into smaller slimes or splatter and deal, like, acid damage to whoever hit it, that kind of thing. So if you had some way of dealing some kind of elemental damage, like fire, cold, or whatever, so your party's wizard or sorcerer
Kill
was
it with fire.
super useful in dealing with these, and they became a lot more difficult if you didn't have one of those.
Kill it with fire.
Exactly. So like in the early days, like I said, there was only a few types, but they've just like spread into an enormous variety of creatures just in Dungeons and Dragons. And as they keep adding like campaign settings and different editions and more monster manuals, you could make an entire campaign out of slimes, like right from level 1 all the way up to level 30.
I have no doubt. I'm just still stuck on puddings.
Yeah.
You said,
Yeah.
like,
As far as
you're
I can
talking
tell,
about the different types and then puddings. Like,
yeah.
what?
Like, I guess they're talking about like the consistency or transparency or the appearance. I'm not really
So it's legitimately a type of
a different, yeah,
slime. It's called a pudding in Dungeons.
yeah, like a black pudding or, yeah, that's the classic one.
Okay.
Yeah. But they all basically share the same characteristics.
Okay, cool.
But later versions included ones that would use the bones of like their victims as like armor, or even as like a bone mech suit, and all the way up to shape-changing slimes that can assume the form of other creatures, like a doppelganger.
So that would apply and more of a sentience for your slimes at that
little
point
bit,
in
yeah.
time if they're using things for armor and shape shifting.
Yep. And then generally slimes get more powerful the bigger they get. So you could have like these gargantuan slimes. And then they even had like ancient and primordial slime deities that were,
Wow.
yeah.
Just keeps going and
Yep,
going.
all the way up
You
to
aren't
like
wrong.
those
That
epic
could
tier
go up-
encounters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that can go up to epic tier levels.
Yeah. Working backwards from here, slimes as we know them like today don't fall into like classical mythology or folklore, at least that I was able to find. But we have to look at like where the inspiration for them came from. So other sources beyond D&D that would have inspired somebody like Gary Gygax.
Okay.
So there's lots of information about Gary Gygax's literary inspirations, and that's stuff like some of it's really obvious, like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, or like the Conan stories by Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs and his Tarzan type stuff, or actually specifically his Mars series, the Martian Tales by so like John Carter of Mars, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Jack Vance was also sort of the blueprint for a lot of stuff in Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
And also a guy by the name of Howard Phillips Lovecraft.
Ooh.
We're going to cycle back to that name in a little bit.
Did any of them have slimes that would have led to this, or are these just influences for Gygax?
Those are the influences
monsters.
he is cited. Like I
Okay.
said, I'm going
This
to
is
come
one
back
he talks
to
about.
Lovecraft specifically,
Okay.
but we're gonna get there.
Okay.
So, as far as like films go, there isn't actually a lot that he talks about as film inspiration. But in his earlier years, I have no doubt that Gary Gygax just ate up every monster movie he could watch.
I know I do.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Not literally.
The one inspiration about film that he talked about was Ray Harryhausen films that include things like Clash of the Titans and Seven Voyages of Sinbad, that kind of stuff, with his pioneering effects for stop motion animation. And he loved to make stuff that was straight out of like classic mythology, Greek mythology, Arabic mythology. So like all of those old stop motion monsters and skeletons. So that's the only film reference that I was able to find in writing. Maybe he talked about it somewhere else that I wasn't able to find in the time I had. I don't know. I did come across a lot of fan speculation that he must have watched a lot of monster movies because there was a ton of them being made from like the classic Universal monsters like vampires and werewolves, and some of those made it like into the monster manuals like almost as they were in the movies. And some people think that he must have loved the kaiju movies coming out of Japan, like Godzilla and Mothra and such.
Who didn't love those movies?
Everybody did.
Everybody
They were
did.
great. They're terrible and great at the same time.
Well, I'm sure there were some people who hated them, but those are people who hate.
Fun. They hate fun. So an interesting part of the speculation that he loves these movies is when you look at like his old drawings of like the owl bear, the original artwork for the very first version of the owl bear in the first monster manual looks a lot like the old rubber suited upright style Godzilla suits that you saw in the old Godzilla movies.
It sure does. He's got a picture here on his little write up, and yeah, it looks like a furry kaiju with the like a dark crystal.
Oh, the Skeksis.
Skeksis mouth.
Yeah,
That's what it looks
like
like.
a really big beak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because of all of these hints that he liked monster movies, I'm taking the further logical leap that he watched as many as he could. So in 1958, a movie starring Steve McQueen was released, featuring an amoeba-like creature from outer space that begins melting everyone and everything and growing to huge proportions. This was a huge hit in the theaters, and it was called The Blob.
The Blob.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say The Blob.
Yeah.
So you're just assuming here that The Blob would be an influence.
Yep.
I mean, I would assume that as well.
Yep. And it looked like that was like when I first started looking at this, I was like, oh, that's it. That's the origin. But
no.
no.
But no.
No. So let's talk a little bit about the Blob. It was it consumed things by dissolving them.
Were you about
like,
to say how much damage it dealt?
No.
Like the blob.
I was just gonna say it deals acid damage.
It deals acid damage.
Acid damage, just like in D&D. Now the D&D ones didn't typically grow as big as like the Blob did. I mean, that thing got enormous in the movie. But it was also, you couldn't kill it with conventional weapons. So like all of our guns and you couldn't bludgeon it. That they did nothing. You had to try and like burn it, but then you would just burn off like little sections. They ended up
No fire. Napalm.
Yeah, I think they ended up freezing it and then locking it
We
away.
watched this, did we not?
The original Blob, I don't believe we did. I
We
saw
watched a Blob movie.
there's been a few. So there were a few like really terrible spin-offs.
Was
and
it
then
like a Riff Tracks movie or
might have
something
been.
that we watched?
there have been
It's not like
rip-offs
it's.
of the Blob. And they
I
even
feel like
released
it might have
another
been,
version
though.
of it
I remember
in
watching something like that.
1988 with much better special effects and much more gruesome special effects, like people being dissolved in faces melting, that kind of stuff.
Have we not watched that one?
No, but we should.
We should.
I watched it ages ago, but I'm due for a rewatch.
Okay. You know how much I love monster
Well,
movies.
we're gonna
Why
watch The
have
Blob,
we
then.
not watched that? And there is a movie that we watched that there was that big blob thing coming for everyone. I thought it was the Blob.
I didn't think it was the original Blob. I thought it was a knockoff. Because there have been a lot of knockoffs.
Okay, now
And
I need to
spin-offs.
figure that out.
Yeah.
Because it's going to bother me. We did watch a Blob movie, though. I do know that.
Yep.
Because I do remember that. And it was very hard to kill, and it was like covering the whole street.
Yeah. Unstoppable,
Yes.
it seemed. Before we cycle back to the Blob, we're going to change gears a little bit. And we're going to go down another thread.
Okay.
It's a connected thread. It's all interconnected.
How many rabbit holes did you go down
Oh, there were so many.
researching slimes?
There were so many. Like I said, I got like halfway writing, and there was like, I found a few things, and I needed to rewrite everything.
I really feel like you went down like a
I'm gonna be
really
like that ancient
rabbit
aliens
slide.
guy by the end of this.
The what?
The ancient aliens guy with the crazy hair. Aliens. You know that guy.
No, I don't know that guy.
Oh, well, he was,
Is it on the Ancient Alien show?
yeah. He's like, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. Don't listen to that guy.
I won't say it.
Ancient humans were way smarter than we give them credit
Oh yeah,
for.
they were totally.
Yeah. The microscope was invented in 1585 in Holland. But it was like 300 years until they could reliably make microscope lenses enough so that people could trust what they were seeing and not just some sort of lens distortion. Fast forward in time to the 1920s, and we've had about a century of like reliable microscopes, and people have been making these fantastic discoveries about a world that was too small to see, like living right under, like literally under our fingernails sometimes.
I think that would have been kind of insane.
Yeah. Like,
There's stuff that people like, even when DNA came out, they're like,
Yeah.
I don't know whether we can believe this DNA evidence or whatever, but to see something microscopic for the first time,
yeah, and it's like
I
clearly stuff that's alive.
right?
Yeah.
There's been naysayers for every single like scientific
Oh, yeah.
discovery, as we know, and I can only imagine that would be very similar.
Oh, yeah.
And also strike fear into the hearts of everybody.
They also got to see things like amoebas devouring other microscopic forms of life, just engulfing them and then dissolving them, much like slimes.
Much like slimes.
So we could just say, that's it. Somebody saw a thing in a microscope and was like, slimes, just make them bigger. But no. There's more.
I keep...
Like I said,
It's
every...
so funny because you're just like, no, there's more. Oh, we're going back further, but there's more.
Yes.
Oh, history.
So the same improvements to microscope lenses were also benefiting telescopes.
Sorry, before you get
Yeah?
to that, I have something to say.
Okay.
I have an announcement. So I don't know if you've noticed, like we are drinking, and the further we get into these, sometimes you can tell we get a little more relaxed verbally.
I'm also really excited about this topic
really excited.
because
But I find that I
It's
get
funny.
kind of like, I don't know, unhinged.
it's fine. It's fine.
So I apologize.
So the same reliability improvements to microscope lenses were also benefiting telescopes. Just, we were looking
Okay.
in different directions, out instead of downwards. So there were all of these like really cool discoveries being made about like space and the microscopic world all around the time when there was a guy by the name of Howard Phillips Lovecraft who was up and coming in the writer's world.
Fascinating.
And in the 1920s, he was increasingly disappointed that even though there was a huge number of like science fiction authors like dipping their toes in the waters, he was really, really disappointed that they were all making such boring antagonists that were all just basically humans but from somewhere else. But it was all of these like aliens from outer space, and they would land, but they were basically just humans
So
from
he's
some
talking
other
about
planet.
alien science
Yeah.
fiction and not like
Yeah,
science
like
fiction in general.
humans visiting or visited by outer space aliens that wanted to take over stuff, but they were literally just humans
Okay.
in most cases. So he was super
Fair
disappointed
enough.
in this.
I would be disappointed too.
Yeah. So he was like, for my next thing, I want something that's completely out there, something super alien. He was like really interested in the idea that there was stuff beyond what humans could perceive. So whether that was like the microscopic realm, in that we needed tools to see really small stuff, or that we needed some kind of like a special spectroscope to see beyond the realm of human vision, like the electromagnetic spectrum. So there was just literally stuff out there that we couldn't see with our human senses. So living beyond our senses. So he thought that was a really neat idea. So he was really excited by stuff humans couldn't perceive.
Okay.
So he wanted to find something, invent something for his next story that was just completely out there, super alien, unrelatable.
I always thought this would be an interesting time because of that.
Yep.
Because I think as a writer now, there is so much discovery happening and there's so much scientific advancement that sometimes you'll come up with an idea, which I do from time to time.
Yep.
And then I find out that it's like cutting edge science and it's like a real thing. And I'm like, great. That was very similar to what I was thinking about, but shit.
On the other hand, that's also really cool.
It is kind of cool.
That we can
yeah.
do stuff now.
Yeah, I just think I love the whole like romanticism of that time period where you're like, we just don't know things. But I
we
also
can make up whatever.
hate a lot of other aspects of it. So.
Yes. We're not going to go there this episode.
It's not what our podcast is about.
Exactly. we're gonna stick to the stories.
I'm just sticking to the monster stories.
Combining ideas from like viral and amoebal microscopy. Yeah, we'll stick with that one. And spectroscopy. He wrote a story about a meteorite that crash landed on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Bringing with it a creature made of strangely colored light.
This sounds a lot like Venom.
Ooh.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Spoiler alert. This strangely colored light could also infect living creatures like a virus.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so this 1927 story called The Color Out of Space, which we've seen a new version of that movie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've seen that movie, and that was with Nick Cage.
Yeah.
Creepy freaking movie. So good.
It was fantastic. 2019.
Watch it.
Color Out of Space.
Like, it was horror psychological thriller-esque, but just really well done. Surprisingly so.
Yep.
Like, I think when we stopped watching that one, it was, it stuck with you a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't want to watch it again right away. Let's just say that.
Yeah. It was great, though. You should check it out.
It was really good, yeah.
There have also been many, many variations of this movie been made over the years. I'll list a few of those in a minute.
Okay.
So once something was infected by this color out of space, it basically turned them into like these amorphous creatures that were deformed. It turned like some plants into things that would spread more like mold, and human creatures would basically lose their shape. Their bones wouldn't support them anymore, and there would be these fleshy blob things.
I was trying to hold it in. I can't stop yawning. I'm so sorry. And it's not that this is boring. This is very interesting. And I'm like, I just really need to
I'm the one who had a coffee before
I need to read more Lovecraft. But usually when I'm yawning like this and not tired, it's I just don't have enough oxygen.
You've been forgetting to breathe again.
Am I forgetting to breathe? I'm enraptured. I'm enthralled. I'm enthralled so much that I'm forgetting to breathe. Like, I'm just like, oh.
You are all breathing manually. You're welcome.
Let's breathe.
Well, these like amorphous fleshy creatures don't necessarily fit the D&D variant of your standard slime. They fit like later, newer versions of like flesh slimes, which is exactly as gross as it sounds.
It sounds really gross. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to pass on that.
Nasty. Hard pass.
Hard pass. Flesh slimes. Hard pass. Hard pass.
So there have been a lot of movies that were inspired or based on Color Out of Space. 1968's Die Monster Die, 1987's The Curse, 2008's A Color from the Dark, which is like the Italian version of Color of Outer Space, 2010's Die Farbe, which is German for The Color.
Okay.
And I thought John Carpenter's The Thing was going to be inspired by this. It actually wasn't. It was inspired by a different horror story called Who Goes There from 1931.
Just in case you wanted to know.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was inspired by Lovecraft's version. Everybody was ripping off everybody at the time. Lovecraft's...
Oh, come on. Everybody still rips off everybody.
That's true. But Lovecraft's Color Out of Space preceded this story by about 4 years. So I don't know. When I was looking into The Blob and Color Out of Space, both of those were inspired by something even weirder that actually goes back to folklore times.
Okay.
And this I had never heard of, which is a little weird because this is totally my thing that I would, if you knew me, you would have been like, wow, you didn't know this? That's weird. So,
They don't know you, but
yeah,
okay.
both
You're getting there.
Colorado Space and The Blob were inspired by this thing that comes from way, way back, stretching into folklore times.
Okay.
The earliest written version, back before the invention of the microscope in 1585 and the telescope in 1608. I had to check my notes. There have been written accounts of a strange gelatinous goop that sometimes appears on the ground that tends to either evaporate in the sun or wash away in the rain and never lasts for very long. These sightings were almost always reported the morning after a meteor shower.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly. And they described a translucent gelatin that was found on the ground or in tree branches.
Pregnant pause. Okay. What is it caused by?
They called this star jelly.
Okay. Star jelly, I've heard of.
Yeah? I had never heard of it.
I've heard of star jelly, but not as after a meteor shower. Some of the other stuff you were talking about as, yes, but not after a meteor shower.
So the earliest written mention of it I was able to find is from the earlier mid 1300s. They're really fuzzy on the dates there. But the terminology for this stuff, it just appears over and over in different places. So it seems like it's from like just older references. But this is the first time it was written down. This account comes from John of Gladensden, who wrote of a stella terra, or terrae, which is Latin for earth star or star of the earth. And he described it as a certain mucilaginous substance lying upon the earth. And he suggested it might have medicinal uses for treatment of abscesses, but there's no record if he ever tried that.
Oh, he's just surmising this might be good for abscesses.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, let's do it. We got a lot of abscesses around here. You might as well cure it with this strange thing.
Exactly. So some other references for this, 14th century medical text calls it uligo, which describes it as a certain fatty substance emitted from the earth that is commonly called a star which has fallen.
Okay.
Another 1440s reference uses the term stera slime, which is like Middle English for star slime.
Okay.
And an old Welsh term for it, and
Keep on
I'm
going.
I'm not Welsh.
Oh, yeah, that's
but,
hard to pronounce.
Puderser, which means wrought from the stars.
But what is it really?
But what is it really?
Give me the science.
The science.
It's not aliens.
No, it's not aliens.
Sorry,
and
everybody.
it's, sorry to disappoint, it's also one of those things where humans are really, really bad at correlating events that have no actual relationship to each other.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Confirmation bias. Hello.
Exactly. So some of the sites that I found during my research that I hope to never come across again, like to say things like star jellies are still unsolved mysteries and we don't know what they are. But come on.
Oh, come on.
We know what
you know what they are.
We've known what they are for at least a century
They
now.
just don't want to accept that they know what they are.
Thanks to microscopes, we know what they are now.
Okay, what are they?
Okay, so the classic star jellies I just described. One of the more common forms is amphibian spawn sacs. These are the mucousy egg sacs that amphibians lay their eggs in, like frogs.
Oh.
Yeah, and they get animals, predators, try to eat them, and they can't actually stomach the slimy part.
Oh,
So they
heard
cough
that.
it up.
Yeah.
So they'll like scoop it up out of a creek or a pond, get a distance away, and then be like, "Blah." So this includes like foxes or birds or raccoons.
So it's not really the meteor shower. It's just the fact that the frogs are laying eggs or whatever, and then something's trying to eat it and then puking it up someplace.
Yeah. We're gonna come back to the meteor shower.
It just logically makes sense.
Yeah. So that's one of the more common versions. Is it's like an amphibian spawn sac that predators can't digest, so they vomit it up.
And they've discovered this because of microscopes and looking
Yeah.
at them and going, hey, it's
And
baby
also
frogs.
direct observations since.
Yeah.
And especially since we have like trail cameras and stuff set up now.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of these predators are like active at night. So they go out at night, they find something to eat, then they barf it up at night. And then people are active during the day. So they see a meteor shower at night. And then when they wake up and wander around and go about their daily business, they see this jelly on the ground.
yeah.
Must be related.
Must be related. I am one to believe that there is an explanation for things.
Yep.
You may not know the explanation, but if you do enough digging or you do enough investigation or research, and not research, if you actually investigate and think about something logically, you can come to like proper conclusions of things.
Exactly.
Mind you, we do really like talking about monsters.
We do. And these are out of folklore tales and such. But
it just is fascinating.
I had a similar journey with this.
Yeah.
Where it was like, wow. So another variant of star jelly is a cyanobacteria or blue-green algae called nostoc.
I'm wondering if that's the one that I've heard of, because
Maybe.
the name star jelly was familiar, and then when you were talking about when it was occurring, not the meteor showers, but some of the other stuff, I have heard about it. I just, you just absorb so much
Yep.
stuff. I'm not really sure why or how at this point. So anyway, it's irrelevant and no one cares.
Yeah. Well, this was new to me. So I was like, wow, here's this whole new thing
Yeah.
that I'd never heard of.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
kinda
normally,
neat, though.
normally like my thing to know about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you do know a lot of random facts.
Super random. Don't play me in IQ 2000, an old 80s board game. Yeah.
With
anyway.
the 80s version?
Well, I mean, I would like to think that I could do the
I don't
pretty
know,
good at the
man.
modern version.
I don't know.
So this nostoc stuff normally is like grows on the ground in like tiny clusters, protected by a thin gelatinous membrane. And it's always like, this is like really small creatures we're talking about here, like small algae clusters. You normally can't see them really without a magnifying glass. But these clusters, after a rainfall, absorb water. This gelatinous membrane absorbs water and it just swells up
That's cool, though.
like dozens and dozens of times larger than it was when it was dry. So this stuff just like poofs up.
Huh.
And then when it dries out, it shrinks again and
It's just-
disappears.
Like, you can see the conclusion from jumping just from something like that into
Yeah.
creating some sort of monstrous thing. Especially
Exactly.
if you didn't know what that thing was at the time.
Yeah. So apparently it's only called star jelly when there was like some kind of meteor shower the night before. Any other time they come across it, it gets other names, like troll butter or spit of the moon, fallen star or witch's butter.
Troll butter?
Yeah, troll butter. It's as gross as it sounds. So I think it's pretty safe to conclude that it's only like star jelly when there's been a meteor shower and people discover it the next day, when maybe they were like, oh, the meteors were all going this way, I'm going to go in that direction. Oh, what's this on the ground that wasn't here before? It must be star jelly.
It must be the star jelly.
Yeah,
It's from the meteors.
exactly. For everybody's reference, meteors, when they burn up in our atmosphere, they burn up. They get super, super hot, and that's why they leave streaks in the sky. And nothing liquid or gelatinous would survive the trip. Even the ones that actually impact Earth usually do so with a lot of force, cause explosions and stuff. But nothing survives. Fun discovery: nostoc is actually edible, and it's even cultivated. Yeah.
This is a fun discovery.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess frog eggs
Yeah.
is one of these the frog eggs kind, because
But, yeah.
people eat
Frogs.
eggs
I'm
and
sure
frog
people
eggs.
have tried to eat frog eggs. I have no doubt
I just-
somewhere somebody has.
That's a nope from me. I'm gonna
Yeah.
vote against eating it.
So in Japan and China, they actually cultivate this blue-green algae nostoc, and they eat it. It's a food source over there.
You know, they are growing algae to try to use that as a sustainable food source as well.
I think that's pretty awesome.
Which is kind of cool. So I can see the leap for that. I just am.
It's one of those food sources that they're looking at for like space stations and long range space travel. So that's kind of neat that like the star jelly might end up in space.
Oh,
Actually,
there's a correlation.
yeah, that's kind of a nice, circle of life kind of deal. Another possible explanation would be slime molds, which can grow quickly overnight and are gelatinous at 1st. And when they dry up, they basically become dusty spores that are like blown or washed away by wind and rain. So they appear quickly and disappear quickly. And you can get a variety of colors in those. So anything from like a white color to yellow all the way out to purple.
And are we thinking that these are led to, making up slime monsters or whatever?
Maybe indirectly through other sources that might have inspired somebody like Gary Gygax to put them into his game as threats for player characters.
Okay.
Another fun alternate name for slime molds in parts of Mexico is caca de luna,
Okay.
which is moon poop.
Okay. Again,
I just wanted to say that.
you just wanted to say
Yeah,
caca de luna.
moon poop.
You just wanted to say moon poop.
Yeah, why not?
Again, the assumption is that they come from the moon. I'm assuming that it's because they don't see this stuff during the day and
Yeah,
it happens at
when
night.
it dries out quickly,
And then,
and then it's there in the early morning, and
there
then
in
the sun
early morning.
dries
Well,
it
it
out.
must be from the night sky.
Yeah, exactly. Fell to the
course.
earth. So there are some modern versions of some kind of star jelly, but a lot of these tend to be things like fallout from like nearby factories or processing plants, and are usually found to be some kind of chemical or polymer that swells up when it's wet. Yeah.
Okay.
I found a lot of cases of these, way too many for me to go into here, but you can look up star jellies and get it all.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
It's piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, like there's like a sulfate that's produced when you like purify lead acid batteries, and it produces like these little purpley crystals, but when you get them wet, they just bloom into these gelatinous globs. So people back then didn't have a lot to fall back on. We have all kinds of sources that we can go and dig up. They didn't. So they would, make correlations that were not necessarily related to the actual causation.
Sorry.
We've been doing that since the dawn of time.
We're still doing that, even though we do
Exactly.
have the resources.
And reliable sources. Change your mindset from I want to believe to I want to know.
That's a really good saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that because I was always a really big fan of X-Files. And,
Yep.
you want to believe, but you also want to know. You want to know the truth.
Yeah.
The truth is out there. But then again, that's what they say.
If you go looking for something to believe in, you're probably going to find it.
Well, we're really hitting hard on our viewpoints of shit
philosophical
today.
deep stuff today. We're going to fast forward again in time to see where else slimes have spread. And we're going to talk about some video games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
So in 1978, the first version of the game Wizardry was released. And this was like such a direct inspiration from Dungeons and Dragons. It was a dungeon crawler. You had fighters, you had thieves, you had wizards, and you went down 10 by 10 or 10-foot wide hallways and explored it like 10-foot by 10-foot square at a time, and encountered monsters that you fought, and you leveled up. Slimes were in that game. They were like your basic opponent for the first couple of like levels of the dungeons.
Would this have been post D&D though?
Yes. So D&D was released in 1974.
Okay.
And this came out in 1978 for like early versions of home computers.
Okay. So historically, folklorishly, there isn't any slimes.
Not like an aggressive, I'm going to
Like nothing from
devour
mythology
people.
or anything like
Not
that.
that I can find directly. It seems that slimes as antagonists were kind of starting out in like that early science fiction realm. So like Lovecraft's writings, and the Blob was like the first direct. Here's this slime creature that eats things and dissolves them with acid, kind of thing.
Okay.
And then that went on to inspire the slimes from Dungeons and Dragons, and from Dungeons and Dragons they propagated into video games. So from Dungeons and Dragons to wizardry to a very, very popular game by the name of Dragon Quest in 1986 was sort of the first, what we would call now classic Japanese role-playing game, or JRPG. They included slimes as a basic, like, low-level opponent. And they were kind of a cute teardrop shape with a big smiley face.
Cute.
Yeah.
Like Slime Rancher is cute.
That's funny because that was the next one I was going to mention. After I talk about how Dragon Quest was so hugely popular, it set the template for a lot of the role-playing games that followed it in Japan, and a lot of those included slimes as basic opponents, and those spread into manga and anime, and they all kind of kept like the same shape of like the slime creature from Dragon Quest. And then you just mentioned Slime Rancher, which was a 2017 game. It was a sandbox exploration game that lets you find, herd, and breed a huge variety of slimes on some distant planet populated only by slimes. I like this one because it kind of keeps the idea that the slimes are from somewhere else, and
Yeah.
you know, they don't come from Earth. It's
And that you
kinda
can
neat.
breed them and
Yeah,
make
combine
more
them.
slimes and combine them and use them as things. I don't know. Can you use them as part of your weapons in that? I
I
haven't
don't
actually
remember.
played
Our daughter played
Our
that
daughter
one.
plays that game.
I have not played it myself. So I have one last place to talk about. And in 1988, Marvel Comics introduced their own version of some slime creature that fell from outer space. And you mentioned him earlier.
Venom.
Exactly.
Like I got this theme song in my head.
The Eminem song?
Yes.
Yeah. So the symbiotes that they call them there, they're amorphous, slime-like beings that don't have a fixed shape. They're also very difficult to harm with conventional weapons, but they're susceptible to like elemental weapons and sound. They're a little different from other slimes we've talked about in that they are sort of intelligent creatures, and rather than just trying to devour everything that they come across, like your traditional slime monster, they're actually seeking to find a compatible host to like live with. But the two most well-known symbiotes are Venom and Carnage, which ties us all back to the beginning of our discussion about how Gary Gygax, Microscopes, and Woody Harrelson are all tied together because Woody Harrelson played Carnage in the second Venom movie in 2021.
I'm so disappointed.
Are you? Oh, come on. Now I want to hear what you were expecting.
I don't know what I was expecting.
I thought he did a great job as
Oh yeah,
Cletus Cassidy
that's
and
fine.
Carnage.
That's fine. It's just I didn't make the connection. I'm annoyed with
that's
myself.
what you're disappointed in. I see.
I'm annoyed with myself.
Well, hopefully it got some other people wondering as well.
I'm sure it did.
Venom actually appeared in all kinds of comic books and cartoon animated versions of Spider-Man long before he hit a film. His first film appearance was 2007 in Spider-Man 3, where we got a weird version.
Sorry. I
Of
think I just
Venom.
made an expression. Like,
Yeah, probably.
I prefer the newer movies.
Yes, the new movies, the new Venom movies are great.
They're just entertaining.
I like them.
I
Yeah.
prefer entertaining.
Yeah, and I really like how Venom is just Eddie's id the
Yes.
whole time.
Yes.
Is great.
I it's got great humor.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than an action movie with really good humor in it. Or, monster movies with humor, whatever
that too.
humor.
All of that.
I don't care what you're doing in a movie. Add a little bit of spicy humor and it makes it so much better.
Exactly. More slimy humor in this case.
I suppose.
Yeah. So that kind of wraps up our strange but interconnected journey.
Not where I thought you were going to go. To be honest, I don't know what I expected.
Yeah.
I was thinking that there would have been some sort of mythological reference or folklorish reference or something that you would have jumped to. But it's all, again, like fairly modern
Yep.
monster inventions. Like,
Yeah.
didn't
Not
we
as
have-
modern as the Mimic.
Yeah, like
Because it's got it ties back, at least 1,000 years or so.
like the Mimic, it's fairly modern sort of,
What we think of as slimes, yeah.
yeah, sort of thing that's become like a monster that, or a creature or whatever, that shows up in video games and movies and is now like an entity that we as society within the last 100 years have created
Yep.
and nurtured and fostered into slimes that we know and love today.
Exactly. So in the time I had to research and come up with this episode, I did not find any like mythological references to like slime creatures. Not direct references at least. So if you do happen to know of some sort of like mythological or like older source for where my slime creatures might have come from, or maybe even sort of like an indirect reference, please let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed what you have seen and heard, please subscribe and follow us on whatever platform you happen to be listening or watching on, and stay tuned for the next episode of Monster Lore. My name is Justin.
And I'm Pam.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.